As you might surmise, as I was preparing for today, I thought, what is it that Alden would like said about Alden? When I asked Ruth that question, she said, probably nothing. While that may be the case, and in so many ways speaks volumes about Alden's humility, that isn't going to happen. Not today, not as we celebrate the life of a good and faithful servant. Most of you, I hope, have had some special person in your lives, other than your parents or your spouses, of course. Someone who has touched you and influenced you, maybe even changed the course of your lives. Someone who made you a better person, a teacher perhaps, a minister, maybe a friend. I mean someone really special. That is the kind of person Alden was to me. I suspected, and a few minutes ago had confirmed, that there are many in this congregation who feel that was the way Alden was to them. I suspected, and a few minutes ago had it confirmed, that there are many of you here who would agree that your lives would have been different had you never met and known Alden. Now, you know Alden never thought he was special. I dare say that Alden didn't consider his life to have been all that spectacular or necessarily worthy of emulation. If you had gone up to Alden and said, I want to be just like you, he would have looked at you for a few seconds with that kind of face. And then said, you better go get some help, boy. He would have said, I graduated from high school, I took a job at Pratt & Whitney, I enlisted in the Army Air Corps, I got married, I had a family, I had a job for 31 years, I went to church and I retired. What's so special about that? That's what he would say. Yeah, Alden, you went into the service. You endured flight after flight in a bomber as it flew over Europe and Germany, while anti-aircraft fire was bursting all around you and your comrades were parachuting out of stricken planes, praying to land alive in enemy territory. You, Alden, were part of what we have come to call the greatest generation. We are sitting here in this place at this time, free to worship as we please because of what you did back then. And you never, ever talked about it. We should all have served our country in some capacity as you served yours. Sure, Alden, you got married and had a family. You married Ruth, who you lived with, laughed with, cried with, provided for, and loved for 65 years. Couples don't even stay married anymore, Alden. You raised Donald, who was sitting right there, and you watched him grow and marry Marcia, who's also sitting right there. And they're still married. Do you think your life with Ruth has had anything to do with that? And you celebrated the birth of your two grandchildren, your grandson David, who was sitting right here with his fiancée Natalie, and your granddaughter Anne, who is not sitting here, because she just gave birth to Gavin, your great-grandchild. Now that, Alden, is getting married and having a family. We should all be so blessed as to have the family you have had. Oh, and about that job you had for 31 years. This church today is full of the people whose lives you touched, maybe whose lives you changed in that humble job. And Alden, those people whose lives you changed, many have gone on to change countless other lives. Your legacy will live on for years to come. We should all be as productive with our jobs the way you have been with yours. And Alden, you didn't just go to church. You lived the church. Most of your obituary recounts the various positions you've held with the UCC. You were a true Congregationalist. You believed in the power, strength, and independence of the congregation, our congregation. You were made a deacon for life by this congregation. We had a deacon who had to resign for personal reasons, and the remaining deacons met to pick a successor. Within minutes, John Estabrook had been proposed and had received unanimous approval. He's hiding back up there behind the organ. I was designated as the one to tell John and to get him on board. Alden, in a moment of extraordinary prescience, sensing that I would probably mess everything up, said he would join me. We approached John and told him of the deacon's decision. John did what Alden knew he would do and what I never thought would happen in a million years. He declined. In typical modest fashion, John explained he was not qualified to be a deacon. I was speechless. Alden was not. He stepped closer to John, and in what I thought was an unnecessarily emphatic voice, giving the proximity of their faces, said, "John, your church is calling you." There was a brief period of silence as John took a deep breath and said, "Then I guess I'm becoming a deacon." No debate, no discussion. Alden, we should all devote the time and energy and love to our church that you have devoted. Alden, you didn't just go to church, you lived your faith. You had an explicit faith. I know this doesn't sound correct, but there was something elegant about your faith. I have never seen anything like it. Your faith was like granite, indestructible. You would tell us that if it was God's will, it would happen. That was that. There was no discussion with Alden about that. No room for debate. No doubt. As long as it was God's will, it would happen. He believed that when he was ill, if it was God's will for him to recover, he would recover. That happened several times. He believed that if it was God's will, that if it was God's will for him to die, he would die, because that was God's will. We should all be blessed with that peace of mind. I happen to believe there is a heaven I also happen to believe that God is a loving, merciful, and forgiving God, and because of that, I might have a shot at heaven. Now, I have been taught that there are many mansions in heaven, and frankly, I would settle for anything, just leave the light on. But Alden, you know that Alden is in heaven, and you know his mansion is right next to God. God wouldn't have it any other way. Alden, when I grow up, I want to be just like you.